Hello, welcome to University Hospital Dorset's talk today for our Understanding for Health, Postnatal and Transitional Care Journey. We're very excited to talk to you today about what that will look like for you. But before we get started, we'd like to hand you over to our governors, Carney and Robert, who would just like to share some information with you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. My name is Carney Trehon. I work for University Hospitals Dorset. I'm also a staff governor. I will just have a few words about what staff governor entails. We are actually a voice between the staff members and the board of directors. We get to attend board meetings and read the reports. We scrutinize if we are not content with any of the matters in a dignified way. We like to think we are a big asset to the hospital because I represent the staff, which is all the nursing staff and healthcare assistants. We don't duplicate the unions or other governing bodies, but we complement similar sort of work. We are elected by vote, and it is a 3-year office term. We need to have passion for staff. I was always passionate about nursing and healthcare staff. All my years of nursing, that is well over 30 years. So I'm very pleased to be representing the staff against our board, and we are very lucky to have such lovely board members in this trust who are very supportive of our staff. So at this stage, I would like to end by saying how nice it is to work here and to represent staff. And we are always looking for staff and fellow staff governors. And I'd like to say thank you and give this over to the public governor, Robert. Thank you.
Constituency of Poole, or also Bournemouth and Christchurch and various other constituencies, and the governing body as well has appointed members from areas such as the university and the various local councils. Our principal raison d'etre is to connect with members and to liaise their views, if we can, with the governors and the directors. We also try and find out what they are thinking by making them become members, and they get emails once a quarter. We also engage generally with the public who are not members. We have always a lag of people who want to become members of the trust, because when they're well, they don't think about the hospital so much, but it's useful to get them in if we can. The second part of our job is to hold the non-executive directors to account, to make sure that they are looking to see that the full executives who run the hospital on a day-to-day basis and are in charge of all matters are behaving and within the boundaries set out by the Acts, etc. We also have to attend governors' meetings and various other gatherings, etc., and be involved with the hospital. Our role is different from that of, say, school governors, but it's very interesting, and if you have any questions, then please direct it through the company secretariat, and they or I will try and answer those. Thank you very much, and now back to the team.
Okay. So, Miss Kerry Taylor, I'm the head of midwifery at St Mary's Hospital, Poole, with University Hospital Dorset. Today we're really excited to walk you through your postnatal journey. So we'll be telling you about the moment that you enter our postnatal ward, right the way through to your first night at home with your baby, up until the point where, as midwives, we'll say goodbye to you and hand over your care to the health visitors. My amazing team here are going to walk you through that process. I just wanted to say that at the end, we will have an opportunity to answer any questions that you have. So please just pop them in the chat box as we go along, and we'll address them at the end. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Caroline and I'm the ward sister on the transitional care unit. I'm going to talk you through what your postnatal journey might look like. So after you have had your baby, it might be that you need to stay for a period of time on the postnatal ward or transitional care. If all is well, after you've had your baby, it might be you're discharged home from labour ward or the Haven, but there may be reasons why you need to stay. It might be a few hours or several days, depending on your clinical need. Here are some of the reasons that you might need to stay. So if you've had a cesarean section, you will need to stay for at least 24 hours, and we will support you through your recovery and help you to look after the baby. Sometimes the baby needs to have regular observations to ensure the baby's well-being, so you'll be admitted to the postnatal or transitional care ward for those reasons. If you've got raised blood pressure or a medical condition, you may require closer observation after you've had the baby, just so that we know everything is well before we send you home. Some ladies need support with feeding, and some ladies have a little bit more of a complicated delivery, so that might be a reason for keeping you as well. For instance, if you had a catheter in or something like that. This is the access to the ward. So the ward doors are locked, and they're accessed by a staff-controlled intercom. So you need to ring the buzzer. The top one says transitional care. The bottom buzzer is for the postnatal ward. So that allows us to access who can access the ward and ensures the safety of all the mothers and babies. So we are a locked unit. This is a picture of one of the beds in a bay on the postnatal ward. It's a 16-bedded bay with 4 side rooms and 12 beds in 4-bedded bays. You'll be looked after by a variety of midwives, support workers and doctors, and also nurse practitioners from our neonatal service. If you require any help or assistance, please ring the call bell and it will be answered within a timely manner. So the call bell system is like the nurse call, which is on the picture on the right hand side. In an emergency, you would pull the red triangle and somebody will come. The transitional care ward is adjacent to the postnatal ward. We share the same front doors. So for the postnatal ward, you go left, and for transitional care, it's right. It's an 8-bedded ward, and we look after babies born at 34 weeks and onwards, and also babies born at term who've perhaps got a low birth weight, babies of mums who are diabetic. Mums stay on the ward with their babies because we know this really helps the bonding process, and mums and babies just love being together. So they go home quicker if they're together. So that's why we do it. We've got some facilities on the ward. So we've got a ward kitchen. We will obviously help look after you. And if you're not able to stabilise from your bed, we'll bring things to you. But if you can get up and around yourself, you can go and help yourself to teas, coffees and breakfast. Lunches and suppers are delivered from the main hospital, and they're done on a choice of menu. So you'll get to order every day what you want, and it comes over from the main hospital. And there's obviously toilets and showers available on the ward as well. On the postnatal ward, you would normally have the what's called the NIPE examination done. So the NIPE exam is a screening tool that's offered to all parents of babies in the first 72 hours of life. It can detect any issues with the heart, eyes, hips, and in boys the testes. At UHD, how we run it there is there's a midwife based on the ward every day to complete the examination. So most babies on the ward will have this done before they go home. But the test can also be done at home by one of the community midwives who are specially trained. So it won't delay your discharge from the hospital if the test isn't done. We obviously welcome our birth partners and visitors. So your birth partner or one other is welcome to stay with you for support on the ward from 10 in the morning up to 11 at night. And you and your partner's own children can visit you on the ward from 10 a.m. up to 9 p.m. Sometimes we can allow partners to stay overnight in exceptional circumstances, and please speak to the team who's looking after you if you think that might apply to you. So going home, so when you and your baby are ready to be discharged home, your midwife will come and talk to you about what needs to happen. We will give you a discharge booklet that's pictured there, and we will talk to you about all things that's helpful for when you take the baby home. We'll also provide any medication that's to go home, and that will come from the hospital pharmacy and be given to you. You should have a car seat ready, so you can keep that in the car. There isn't much space around the bedside sometimes, so keeping it in the car is good. And a member of staff will take you down to the front entrance of the hospital so that we know you're safely delivered to the car. Please make sure we've got your correct address. The midwife should check it with you, but if you've moved house recently or if you're going to stay with a family member, please let us know so that we can send our community colleagues round to the right address. That's very helpful. That's me finished.
Thank you. My name is Jen. I'm one of the community midwives here at UHD. So I'm going to talk you through from coming home to when we end your journey with the midwives and hand you over to the health visitors. So as Caroline said, when you're ready to come home from the hospital, you'll have everything ready, and that can be a bit of a scary task in itself. But we advise that you have, nice comfy clothes to go home with, and that can be either you've brought that in with you already or your partner's brought that in for the day. And just to make the journey less stressful, to have changed your baby before you leave the hospital and a last feed, so that your baby will probably have a nice little nap on the way home, and the journey will be less fraught. After that day, the next day, you will get a visit by a community midwife. And with a community midwife, we will always endeavour to see you the next day, but we unfortunately can't give you a time of when we're going to turn up. It's very difficult to anticipate how long each visit may take in a day. So a midwife will just knock on your door at some point, generally between 9 and 4 in the day. However, we always ask that if you haven't had a visit by 3:30, you do give us a call so that we can just check that a midwife is on their way to you. We try and make every effort that you're visited by somebody that you might have known before, so a member of the team that has seen you before antenatally, but it may not be exactly the same person that you've seen before, but it will be one of the members of the team that will come and see you and check you and your baby out at your home. In the first few days, you may want to show your baby off and have lots of visitors, and that's lovely. But lots of people coming around can be quite tiring. So it's really advisable to limit the amount of people that come and see you at home. Those ones that you want to come and see you, make sure they make you a cup of tea, make you something to eat, or bring a meal with them, or happy to stick the hoover around your house when they come and visit. So you've come home with your baby and you've got your first night, and that first night can be quite sometimes really busy. Your baby is adapting to new sounds and smells, and will want to feed a lot. Babies like to feed a lot at night time, but particularly the first night home, your baby will probably be awake a lot and wanting to feed. They're still learning about feeding, so it may take some time to achieve that and get that right, and that's regardless of whether they're bottle feeding or breastfeeding. Babies just naturally want to feed lots at night time. It's also been shown that lots of touch with your baby, so lots of cuddling, lots of touching, talking to your baby, that sort of stimulation. Babies like lots of that, and it helps with their brain development. So your baby may want lots of contact with you and lots of cuddles. And we do advise that you just go with that as much as possible and cuddle your baby as they need them to be. So when we come and see you at home, we need to do a couple of checks, one for you as mum and one on baby. So when we do a check for you, mum, we will check that your blood pressure is okay. We'll check your pulse and your temperature. We'll ask you about your toilet habits and how your bowel movements are and passing urine and whether that's okay or if you've got any problems with that. We'll check your tummy, make sure that that feels okay, and ask you about any bleeding that you're having. We'll look at any stitches that we need to check that there's healing and there's no problems there. We'll discuss pelvic floor exercises with you, and we'll just generally check your health and well-being. With babies, we're going to check their heart rate. So we will listen to their heart rate, generally with a little stethoscope. We'll check their breathing rate, and we'll also check their temperature. We like to look at their tummy button and their umbilical cord, and we'll ask you lots about their wet and dirty nappies. It's really important about wet and dirty nappies because that tells us a lot about how your baby's health is. So for you, just to expect, for baby poo, the way in which you feed your baby can determine what your baby's poo looks like. If you're formula fed, then your baby's poo will look quite often a little bit firmer and sometimes a little bit darker in colour. Whereas a breastfed baby's poo, they will poo very frequently, usually quite loose, and sometimes can look quite yellow with seeds in, and that is very normal for a baby. It will change colour over days. From the start, your baby's poo may look very dark and black, and then it will change by the time your baby is about 5 days old, will change to sort of a yellowish colour. And we can also tell us a lot about how your baby's doing in terms of their feeding. So we will ask you how often your baby's been weeing. Sometimes this is very difficult to count because the nappies absorb it and you can't always tell. From the picture here, you might notice that the baby's wearing a disposable nappy with a little yellow strip down it. And a lot of the disposable nappies now have indicator strips that they change colour when your baby's had a wee. So that sometimes can be very useful to you to count how many times your baby's had a wet nappy. But it does tell us generally how well your baby's feeding and how hydrated your baby is. And what we generally go with is that we're expecting around 6 to 8 wet nappies per day to know that your baby is well hydrated and feeding well. Your baby's wee should be clear, and that's why it's very difficult sometimes to tell whether your baby's actually had a wee in the nappy, and it shouldn't smell. If you've noticed any colour to your baby's wee, particularly if it's orange or if it's very smelly, please make sure that you contact your GP and discuss that with them. And of course, if you have any questions regarding your baby's weeing or pooing, then please do contact us or your health visitor or GP. In the first few weeks, it's quite difficult to, or it can be quite difficult to adapt to a newborn baby. Babies cry a lot and they can't talk to us, so it's very difficult to determine what they need. So we like to talk to parents about something called ICON. ICON stands for infant crying is normal, comforting methods can help, it's okay to walk away, and never ever shake a baby. Babies can't talk to us, they can't tell us what they need. So trying to learn their signals and what the cries mean can be quite difficult in the first few weeks and can aid to your frustration because you sometimes just don't know why a baby is crying. So this has come about, and there's a really good website to follow, and you can search up on the ICON website for techniques to calming babies and how to meet their needs and recognizing different signs of what those cries might mean. So do log into the website and have a little look at that to see how that will help. In the community, we've got lots of feeding support. Regardless of how you plan to feed your baby, we can support you with breastfeeding and we can support you with bottle feeding. At your first visit home with the midwife, we will assess your feeding and we will determine from there what advice and what support that you might require. If you plan to breastfeed, we obviously can discuss that. We can also provide information regarding expressing your milk and then storing it in a safe way if that's what you're planning on doing at any point. And for formula-fed babies, we can offer support on how you sterilise, making up feeds and advice on pace feeding. Also, together with us as midwives, we work very closely with a very good supportive breastfeeding team that is made up with our maternity support workers who provide ongoing care for feeding, regardless of how you're feeding your baby. And this is provided every day, if need be, either by the telephone, by them giving you a call and supporting you on the phone, or by visiting you at home if you need a little bit of more practical help and support. And that's 7 days a week. If at any point you want any help with your feeding, then we do have that available for you. We can adapt any care that you require to your individual needs because babies don't settle into patterns and not one baby is the same as another baby. And babies don't settle into patterns with feeding. And so in the first few days, it's important to remember that your baby won't necessarily have a pattern with feeding. They're not set to clocks, they can't read a clock. And so what we usually advise is that you just monitor how often your baby feeds in a 24-hour period. And what we're expecting is around 8 to 12 feeds in that 24-hour period if you're breastfeeding. A baby who's formula feeding might feed slightly less, and on average it's around 6 to 10 feeds in a 24-hour period. So don't worry about timings necessarily, unless that's been advised to you for any particular reason. Don't worry about looking at a clock, just monitoring how many times your baby feeds over a 24-hour period is very helpful. And again, if you have any issues and problems with your feeding, you just give us a call either on Labour Line, which is 24-hour number, or our community bases, which you'll find the numbers in your discharge booklet from the hospital. You can call any point requesting any help and support with your feeding. One thing that we check babies for in the first few days is the colour of their skin. it's very normal for some babies to get what we call jaundice, which is a slight yellowing of their skin, and this can be very, very normal. For some babies, however, it might be a little bit more than normal, and they can become very tired and lethargic and sometimes unwell if they are too jaundice. So we have these little machines that you can see on the picture. It's called a TBR machine, and we place it on the baby's chest, and it can monitor an amount of something called bilirubin in their skin and in their blood to check to see whether the jaundice levels are normal or not. So it might be that when we see you at home, if we're concerned that your baby's skin looks a little bit more yellow than we would expect, then we may use a machine on their skin. It doesn't hurt them, it's just placed on their skin, on their chest, and it just gives us a number reading on the screen to let us know, and we can tell which of their numbers are okay and which aren't okay as to whether we need to send you in. Sometimes babies require a blood test, which we can't do at home. And if the readings are pointing that we might need to do a blood test, then we would arrange for you to go back into the postnatal ward generally if you're within the first 5 days, or into the children's ward if you're over 5 days old, to do a little blood test to check on the levels in the blood to see if that's okay. Another test that we would do at home is something we call the NNST, or neonatal screening test. And we always do this when your baby is 5 days old. And this can be done either in your home, or we may arrange for you to come into a clinic and an appointment given to you for when your baby's 5 days old. And this test is recommended for all babies. It's done when they're 5 days old because they've had a few days of metabolism, so eating some food, and therefore then we can screen for 9 very, very rare conditions, and I'm not going to pronounce them all on here because I can't. So they're listed on the screen there, but they're also listed in your red book. If you have your red books at home, then you can just go to the screening page and they'll be listed in your red book. And we do this test by taking 4 little spots of blood. So we prick the baby's heel, we take 4 little spots of blood that goes on the little card that you can see on the piece of paper, on the presentation. And then we send that card away to the lab to be screened. It takes a few days for those results to come back. Sometimes the results don't actually get to you until around 4 weeks' time. But basically we say if you haven't heard within around a week, then the results will probably come to you in the post, and it means okay. Occasionally we need to repeat a screening test for a particular reason. And if that's the case, then we will let you know that we need to come and repeat it, and we will explain the reason why we need to do that. And then you'll expect to hear from the health visitor. All the time whilst you're still under the midwife's care, the health visitor will have had notification that you've given birth, and then they start to arrange 2 appointments with you. So you'll have 1 appointment, usually when your baby's around a week to 10 days old. There will be a hearing test, and that's usually an appointment sent to you in a post to go along to one of your local children's centres, and your baby will have a little hearing test where they put some little probes in the ear and can check some vibrations in the ear to see if your baby has any issues and problems with their hearing at this point. The second visit that you'll expect with the health visitors is one that they will come and do for you at home, usually when your baby's around 10 to 14 days old. And they will reweigh your baby at this point, do a top to toe check on your baby. It's usually the first time your baby might be measured with their length, because we don't do that at birth. So normally the first visit with the health visitors is the time that they do that. And they'll talk to you all about how you're feeling as mum, how things are going at home, and any follow-up care, and arrange any follow-up appointments. That could be that they come back in to see you at home, or it could be that they advise that you go on to a baby clinic where they need to see you again to weigh your baby at different times. And then it will get to the point where we will be discharging you from our maternity care. We normally do this between the time that your baby is 3 and 4 weeks old, where we would like to do a final check. And this could be done over the telephone, or it could be by visiting you at home, or asking you to come into a clinic. And this would be your final check with the midwives. So we do, again, a top to toe check. We'll talk to you about, have you registered your baby with their birth certificate? Have you registered your baby with the GP? Making sure you've seen the health visitor and that you've got follow-up appointments with them, and that you've got a follow-up appointment with your GP. we will discuss contraception with you. You may not have decided at this point whether you know that you want to have any more babies, but we will discuss with you about your contraception options at that time. We'll discuss how you're feeling emotionally and making sure you've got support at home. If there's any concerns with yourself that you've expressed to us or your partner's discussed with us, if your partner's there, then we can support you and refer you on for any help and support if you require it. And then if all is well with you and baby, we are then happy to say goodbye, and our postnatal journey is over at that point, and we hand you fully over to the health visitors. Thank you.
That's our journey finished. Now we'll see whether we have any questions.
We do indeed have some questions. First of all, thank you so much for that talk. That was brilliant, really, really good. And to see that red book, I've got 2 children, so that red book brings back lots of memories. I'm glad to see they're still using them. So first question, you talked about how if you need care, ring your GP. Somebody's pointed out it can be quite tricky to get a GP, or it's really tricky to get a GP appointment now. So who do I contact if I'm worried about my baby? You mentioned the labour line. Is that the best place to go?
So you can see on the screen now we've put who to contact. So there's several numbers that you'll either have from the discharge booklet that you'll receive when you leave the hospital, or through the numbers on Badgernet. And those are our community office numbers. They generally aren't 24 hours on our community numbers. They're a sort of a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 kind of system. But labour line is a 24-hour number, so you can give them a call and then they can point you in direction of who needs to help. There are things that women do need to see the GP for, especially if it's medical, and therefore there are occasional times where we aren't able to help and we do need to refer you to GP, but some things that we might be able to answer or help you with over the telephone or come and see you.
Thank you very much for that. We've got 2 questions about cords. Number 1, does the cord cutting impact whether your baby has an innie or an outie belly button? And the second question on that is one that's come on the email. How long does it take for the cord to sort of heal, if that's the correct word? And what are the sort of the signs to be looking out for if something's not going so well?
So that's probably what you, isn't it?
It's fine. First question, no, it doesn't matter how we cut the cord to whether it's an innie or an outie. I've been asked that one before, but not for a while. So no, it doesn't make any impact. Unfortunately, it is what it is. In terms of how long it takes to come off, that varies from lots of babies. Sometimes it's a couple of days. 2 days, I've known one come off at 2 days old, and one take 3 weeks to come off. But on average, they're around a week to 10 days or so for the majority of cords will come off there. You don't need to do anything special with the cord. The more air that gets to that area, the quicker generally it will fall off. So rolling down the nappy underneath the cord is quite a good idea. You can bath the baby with a cord on, but we usually advise to wait for bathing until after that cord's off so that it doesn't get too wet and therefore can come off quicker. But you don't need to do anything special with the cord.
How long does that normally take, would you say, for
it to come off? Around, on average, about 7 to 10 days, but it can vary.
And one more question on the cord. Can partners be involved in the cutting of the cord if appropriate?
Absolutely. Yep.
Just going back to the cord as well, one thing we would suggest, certainly in those early days while the cord is still quite soft, is just making sure with little boys that you point their willy down in their nappy, do that nappy up nice and tight, and then keep the cord nicely out of the nappy. So the cord will go from being quite soft to almost like a scab. It doesn't hurt the baby at all. It looks really nasty, like it would be painful, but they don't have any sensation in it at all. So it is just keeping it nice and clean and dry will help it to fall off quickly. There used to be a time many years ago, because I've been a midwife for far too long, where we weren't able to discharge women from our care until the cord had dropped off. And I can remember going out, 4 weeks later, just knocking on the door, looking to see if the cord had finally dropped off. I'm not sure what our longest task was, but yes, we weren't able to discharge from our care until it had dropped off. Things to look out for, though, when you would need to contact your GP if you were worried. Sometimes, very rarely, they do become infected. So if you notice a really smelly cord, trust me, you don't have to sniff for it. It smells so bad that you will just notice. Or if the area is red and pink around the actual skin around the belly button, then definitely call the GP for an appointment then, and they may be able to give you some cream to help sort out that issue.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to go scroll up. Sorry, I've lost my place. Bear with. We've got a question here on that subject, or a bit of that subject. Can I take the placenta home with me? I hear you can make it into tablets.
You can. The placenta is your product. We just would give you some information as you're leaving the hospital. Some women do like to, we've heard all sorts, blend it, turn it into smoothies, turn it into capsules. Oh, burgers, I've not had that one before. Oh god, that's gross. Bury it, but there is very strict guidance that we will provide for women leaving the hospital if they want to bury their placenta. But it's the woman's product, and she is well and truly welcome to take it with her if she wants to. If she doesn't, it just stays in hospital and gets incinerated.
Perfect, thank you for that. My stomach muscle separation is still quite bad several years later. Is there anything you can do to improve this for me?
Yep. So I would suggest, if that's the case, is see your GP and have a referral to the physiotherapist. Usually in the first few weeks, if we identify that there is a separation with the abdominal muscles, then we would refer to the physiotherapist for you, and we can do that in the time that you're under our care. But if it is outside of our care and we've discharged you, then speak to your GP, and the GP can refer you on to the physio. And yes, there are things that you can do to try and improve the separation there. Yes, so exercises and things, but that's the physio's department that usually deals with those.
Thank you for that. I think this is the rhetorical question. Will bouncing on a trampoline ever be the same again? Hashtag pelvic floor.
Absolutely.
So let's get to another one. I'm worried about being forced to go on contraception after giving birth. Am I allowed to say no?
Of course. Contraception is your choice.
I think the important thing that women need to realise is traditionally contraception was discussed at the 6-week GP appointment. But what we really need to do as midwives is ensure that women realise that they will be having a period before that 6-week point, and they will be fertile again. So if you are resuming sexual intercourse and you don't want to have a baby, you need to address your contraception issues before you see your GP at 6 weeks. So if you are absolutely not wanting a baby, be mindful that you need to start contraception quickly. But it is absolutely your choice to say no thank you to any medications.
Can I answer the pelvic floor question? So the lady about trampolines, there's lots and lots of things that we can do to help and support ladies with their pelvic floor health. It's quite a big topic at the moment of trying to encourage ladies to do their pelvic floor exercises and different things like that. So if you are having any difficulty in the first few weeks after you've had your baby with control of going to the toilet, leakage, thinking, gosh, I'm never going to go on a trampoline again, then please do mention it to a midwife, because we can refer you on to our pelvic health physio, who can do lots and lots of good things. It's always been traditionally thought, oh, it's a normal thing, you've had a baby, you're not going to be able to go on a trampoline again. But there are lots of things that we can do and offer and support to help with that. So don't sit in silence, do mention it to us, and do ask for a referral.
It is vitally important that any urinary incontinence or fecal incontinence is reported to us. It can be really embarrassing. It is very rare to have fecal incontinence, but if you do have it, it's important that you tell your midwife, because she can get you the right help and support.
Thank you for that. Is parking subsidised if mother and baby have to stay in hospital for an extended period?
No, it isn't, unfortunately, is it?
No,
it used to be, I think, but now I think that's all stopped now. Yeah. Sorry.
And there's another question that's come through about on the email about moving to Bournemouth. Obviously, we've heard in the news, we've seen you on the news, in fact, talking about the move to Bournemouth. Is that going to make a difference for the care you can provide to mothers and partners?
We're really excited about our move to Bournemouth. It's still a little way away yet. We're thinking we'll probably move in the spring of 2025. But for the postnatal journey for those ladies, we think it will be a really lovely journey because we're going to have many more postnatal side rooms, which will give much more privacy and enable partners to be able to stay overnight. In our current venue, we're unable to do that unless in exceptional circumstances, because we just don't have the space to do it well and to give women the dignity that they deserve when they're with us on the postnatal wards. That will be massively different in our new build.
Thank you for that. And do you have a rough timescale?
We think spring 2025. It keeps getting pushed back a little bit. So originally we were expecting October 24, and now we just know spring 25. But as of 2 weeks ago, that was where we were expecting to be.
Well, good luck with the move. And we've got another question here. I'm suffering from mastitis, and everyone keeps recommending cabbage leaves. Does this actually work?
There is some evidence, isn't there, to say that it works? Yeah,
It needs to be Savoy cabbage, which is the greenest type of cabbage you've got. It's the chlorophyll in the leaves that actually takes pain and heat from the breast, so it can help. It won't stop the mastitis, but it can help with the discomfort that you're feeling.
It's also keeping it in the fridge as well, isn't it? Because
yes, absolutely. If you keep it in the fridge and then pop a leaf into your bra, it can help reduce the heat that you've got. If you're suffering mastitis, then please do discuss with, I don't know how many weeks old your baby is or days old your baby is, but if you're still under our care, please do give us a call, as our feeding team can be in touch and give you some advice and support about that, or speak to your GP or health visitor if you're past our discharge time. There's lots of community support out there if you've got mastitis.
The really important thing with mastitis, the two important things are making sure that the breast is fully drained at each feed. So your healthcare professionals can give you support with that. But also it's really tough because mastitis is so painful. You won't want to feed off of that breast, but you absolutely have to. And thirdly, the healthcare professionals, you may well require some antibiotics, and you'll be able to get support with the GP for that.
Another question come through about expressing milk. You've talked about breastfeeding and everything. Expressing milk, you haven't mentioned that. Is that something that you help encourage and support, and sort of how to store, etc.?
Absolutely. Yeah. If anyone has made any decision that they would like to express either long term or just one-offs, then we can go through all about sterilising, pumping and storing of milk at any point. Yeah.
We've also got expressing machines on the postnatal ward as well. We've got lots of them, so if people are advised to or wish to express on the postnatal ward, we can support with that.
Perfect, thank you. Well, we've come to. I know we've got one more question just come through. Breaking question. Can babies suffer with colic for a few days? Any suggestions to help with this?
Well, that's a big question. If only there was a solution to colic, it would be a godsend for most parents, I think. Colic, yes, it's excessive wind, it's trapped air, trapped wind, and yes, absolutely can just last for a few days, but for a lot of babies it does last for longer periods. If your baby is suffering from colic, then please again just ask health visitor, midwife for things that we can do. It very much depends on, the advice would be dependent on whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding. Could be that you need to slow down feeds or feed in a different place and position. It could be around winding your baby and showing you techniques about that. So there's lots of different things that we can help. Some babies unfortunately just do suffer from colic no matter what we do. There's medicines that you can buy from the pharmacist if you want to, which we can advise you about. They don't work with every baby, but there are things on the shelves in supermarkets and things that may help. So again, it's about asking those questions, either for us as midwives or health visitors for that advice, and we can then be more specific with what you need to do.
Thank you very much. I think this might be a question that you've sort of covered, and they should probably refer themselves, but it's normal to bleed for 6+ weeks after birth, after giving birth?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Usually most ladies will have a GP appointment around 6 weeks post-birth with their surgeries, and that's one thing that the GP will check. It varies from woman to woman how long their bleeding may last, but on average it's around sort of 5 to 6 weeks. There are some ladies that may bleed a little bit longer than that, and it isn't necessarily a problem, but your GP will ask you at your 6th week, and we'll keep an eye on it if it seems to be heavy or excessive or anything unusual, but absolutely perfectly normal to bleed for up to that period of time.
We would normally expect with bleeding for it to go from a fresh red to a pinky colour to a brown colour. It should never, other than the first few days, never really have clots in it, and it certainly shouldn't be offensive smelling. And we would expect that you could have a few tummy tightenings, but that after 3 or 4 days that those disappear. So basically, if you ever have any flooding through a sanitary pad within the hour, if you have any smelly bleeding, any blood clots or cramping after 3 days, then it's really important that you let the maternity team know about that. And that risk of having a heavy bleed can be right up until 6 weeks postnatally. So it may well be that your bleeding has totally stopped and then comes back again. And if you do have any of those symptoms that I've just mentioned, it's important to ask for help. Everybody bleeds a bit differently, don't they? Some people, it will disappear after a couple of weeks and then come back when they're a bit more active and moving around. So it's just looking out for those things that I've mentioned, and if they occur, shouting for help.
Actually, by coincidence, the question just come in on exercise. When is it safe to start doing exercises again after having my baby?
That depends on how you've given birth generally. For vaginal birth, it depends on, you know, if you've had stitches, things like that down below, but starting something gentle around the 6 week mark, once you've seen the GP, is usually okay, depending on what you're talking about. You know, it's probably not good to start training for a marathon straight after that, but gentle exercise just to get yourself back into it. Usually if you've had a cesarean, we do advise just that little bit longer recovery, normally between sort of 8 and 12 weeks, again, depending on your recovery and your activity before you've had the baby, and what you're used to. But it's around 6 to 12 weeks, depending on how you've given birth.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. We've actually come to the end of the questions now. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Kerry and the team for coming and giving this talk today. Really good advice. Like all our talks, this will be kept on our Understanding Health Talks library, which is available on our website. So please do have a look at the other talks. There's more maternity talks, but there's talks covering a range of different conditions. So a really good resource. So please do use it. You can also learn about the future developments of the hospital and our move, in fact, from maternity going from Poole to Bournemouth. So thank you to the team, but also thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you at the next talk. Thank you.